This is a Huddle Sports Network broadcast. You can find us on Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, Facebook, and of course YouTube. Get all your NFL news here first.
And welcome to another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on the Huddle Sports Network. I'm Taylor Phillips. He's Ed Smith. Got Tigers, Wolverines, Spartans, and Lions to talk about. We'll talk about the Tigers advancing to the ALDS. We'll preview Michigan at Washington, the rematch from the national championship, plus Michigan State at Oregon, which is probably going to be lopsided. And then the Lions finally beating the Seahawks. Oh, my God. That was so awesome, man. So, the Tigers, they settled for the third American League wildcard spot after losing 2 of 3 to the White Sox, who lost 121 games, which is still unacceptable to me. But then they go to Houston as a result, but then they sweep the Houston Astros all of a sudden in the first 2 games, both at Minute Maid Park, in the American League wildcard series. Number 6 sweeps number 3 with wins 3-1 and then 5-2. Tarek Skubal in game 1 was lights out, got 3 runs of support with 3 RBI singles, all in the top of the second inning. And then in game 2, Andy Ibanez delivered the game-winning pinch hit 3-run double in the top of the 8th inning to cap off a 4-run 8th inning. And that was that. So pros and cons here. Jackson Jobe did give up both runs for Houston in game 2, but the rest of the bullpen did just fine. Tyler Holton started, Bo Brisky. So the Tigers, they're in the ALDS. They will take on the Cleveland Guardians Saturday at 1:08 at Progressive Field. All games are on TBS, by the way. Game 2 is in Cleveland Monday at 4:07, and then game 3 at Comerica Park to be determined. Game 4, if necessary, in Detroit on Wednesday. Game 3 on Wednesday, game 4 on Thursday, if necessary, and then game 5 at Cleveland on Saturday, October 12th. So, Tigers had a 0.2% chance of making the playoffs since August 10th or 11th, but then they make the playoffs, and here they are in the ALDS, Ed.
Not just that, Taylor. Like, even as late as September 30th, I believe they were given a 30% chance just to make the ALDS. So that lets you know how much of an underdog they were in this series against Houston. Because let's not forget the fact. This is a fact that this is a series, a team and a franchise that has had consecutive long-term postseason trips dating back to 2016 or so. Talking 7 straight times they had made the ALCS, gotten themselves into the World Series multiple times, won a couple of championships as a result. So this was very much a deeply experienced postseason team. I believe they had over, I forgot what the exact number was, but their terms of combined postseason experience far outdwarfed the Tigers. Because I think for the Tigers, in terms of combined postseason experience of the history of anyone on that roster, only 12 games, period. That was it coming into this series. So this was an example of the young and dumb team that probably didn't know their own strengths rather. But they're in the spot that they are right now because first and foremost, we are seeing And what we have seen for the past couple of months now is just an absolute masterclass being done by AJ Hinch. And if you were asked me, and if you were asked a lot of people, that would be your consensus choice and pick for AL Manager of the Year. Considering the fact that yes, while he does have an absolute workhorse ace in Scooble who did his job, the stuff that he's been able to manage and do with this bullpen time after time after time, finding the right spots, finding the right situations, knowing when to put this guy in. Sometimes he's got to take risks or gambles that won't necessarily pay off, such as bringing in Jackson Joe when he did when it was 1-0. That's a risk that sometimes it's not going to pay off, but thankfully they limited the damage in that game too. Now, as for that game one, it just came down to these three things really: Scooble not not shying away from the spotlight in his postseason debut, the bullpen doing its job, especially when Jason Foley almost blew it in the ninth inning, and that they had to bring in Bresky to save that, and timely hitting, because that's the thing that you're always going to need in the playoffs. It's not how many hits that you get or how many home runs or how many runs you get. It's when do you get them. It's the timely hitting, particularly if it's done with 2 outs, as we saw um, all in that second inning in game one, because that's all they needed. Because knowing for a fact that you had Scooble, who was going to be on his A game, or as close to the A game as possible, despite the fact that he had his own troubles. I think it was the fourth inning or fifth inning where he got himself into a couple jams, but to his credit, he pitched himself out of it. He didn't lose his composure, didn't lose his cool, and he got himself out of those jams. And what we saw behind him, great defense consistently throughout, whether it be Green out in left field or Torkelson out at first base. We saw notable examples of that. Even when Torkelson had that bad moment where I thought, not you know what? I'll be honest. Torkelson did as good a job as he could have done grounding that ball with the bases loaded in game two, because honestly, he saved what could have been a potential 2-run single by making that throw to home field. Rogers probably could have had a play on it, but you lived with the damage. You only got out there, which is the 2 runs given up in that jam, and you were only down by 1. And as we saw how Houston fell apart in the next inning, they gave it right back up to you anyway. So again, it was just going to come down to, can you get your timely hitting? And you got it when it matters most. You got it in clutch moments, like the 3-2 out hits in game one, like Parker Meadows hitting the foul pole early in game two, and of course the aforementioned Andy Ibanez triple, which is going to gain more and more lore as history goes on. I think that was the second time ever in franchise history that a pinch hit player had gotten a 3 RBI extra base hit, or whatever the case may be. That's the second time ever that happened in Tigers franchise history. So combine all that together, you say it's voodoo, you say it's luck, you say whatever, but this team keeps
or being overdue or something like that.
Still, either way, this team is finding ways to win, no matter what. And like we see in one of the comments right here, they're doing this with a salary of their current entire playoff roster has a salary of less than, for example, Josh Hayden himself on the Astros.
Or
One of their
I
big
thought it was Josh Hader or something like that.
Hayden, I believe, yes, it was Hader, yes. But still, the fact that despite these deficiencies, despite these apparent disadvantages, they were still able to not only win this series but sweep them. Because guess what? In a short series, all you need is your pitching. Your pitching can absolutely be your guide in a super short series such as this, and it can absolutely be a guide for them in the next series against Cleveland. Because guess what? You're looking at a situation to where if you do get this to a game 3, game 4, game 5, you can book it or plan it to where, hey, you got Scooble in your back pocket for game 2. Let's assume you get out of Cleveland tied 1-1. All you got to do is find a way to split games 3 and 4 back in Detroit. And guess what? Now you have not just Scooble at your disposal in game 5, winner take all. You can also use your entire bullpen as well. So despite the fact that Cleveland is the higher seed, despite the fact that they are the AL Central champions, And despite the fact that they were 7-6 against the Tigers in the regular season, you got to remember another thing. The last time that these two teams met was back in July. This is a far different Tigers team now than the one that Cleveland saw in July. So,
especially
while
without Javier Baez.
exactly, so without all that, with all that into consideration, I would be very mindful if I was Cleveland because they want to say, "Oh, you know what? Wow, thank goodness we avoided Houston. That just made things easier." Be careful what you wish for.
Yep, be careful what you wish for, indeed. And by the way, to touch on something here, Kneecap Buying with a Motor City Line said, "Who cares? He sucked versus the 8 rookies he faced." That's Josh Hader, by the way, by name. So, the number 10 Michigan Wolverines at the Washington Huskies, the rematch from the national championship game last season. That is Saturday at 7:30 on NBC and Peacock. One player to key watch for is usually at quarterback, and it is indeed senior quarterback Will Rogers, 1,354 passing yards and 10 touchdowns versus 0 interceptions in the first four weeks. 64.8 quarterback rating thus far.
And
So,
yeah. If you're Michigan, you'd kill to have that type of production from your QB room right now.
No. So the Washington Huskies are 2.5-point favorites. They're 3-2. Michigan, I believe it. Yeah, they're 4-1. The Wolverines are. Yeah, the first 5 weeks. My apologies. So, what have you got? What you got?
Besides the fact that this is a grudge match of sorts from the national championship game, even though there's much different circumstances, it's not a neutral site game. It's a true road versus away. Different makeup of rosters, different makeup of coaching staffs. Um, Despite the fact, you're seeing a situation that even though Michigan looked very awful against Texas, and honestly, you can make an argument they should be 2-3, if not potentially 1-4 themselves, with how completely horrific their offense has been, particularly in the passing game. Do you know, Taylor, that Michigan, in the entire nation, they are within the bottom 10 ranking wise as far as passing yards per game. Alex
Wow.
Orji, Alex Orji has yet to throw over 100 yards in a single game. You're looking at a offense that yes, they have the run, yes they know they're good at it, but it's very one dimensional. Once you get that neutralized and you're forcing this team into situations where they have no other choice but to throw, the drive stalls and dies. That's what led to Minnesota almost making that comeback in that fourth quarter because the offense could not put together a sustainable drive that milked away the clock and or put points on the board to salt the game away. So what are you going to see here against Washington, particularly in the fact that they have themselves a quality running back in Jonah Coleman, who is going to be a nice test, a very nice test for this Michigan defense. And knowing how stout that they can be against the run, they're going to be facing the best back that they've faced so far this year, or at least the best rushing attack that they faced since Texas. I'll say that. Um, but still, it's going to come down to what can you do in finishing drives in the red zone, particularly in the fact that this is, like I said, a road game, true road game. In fact, it's the first road game of the year for Michigan, and to come into, let's just say it's a bit of a hostile environment because with Washington Stadium, with Husky Stadium to be specific, no, it's not quite exactly CenturyLink Field. It's not Seattle with the Seahawks, but it's still a formidable home field type of experience for them because they have a current win streak of 17 games at home, quite similar to what Michigan was doing before they ran into Texas. So with this being a primetime game as well, this is getting the Big Ten Saturday night treatment on I believe NBC and or Peacock. So knowing
Yep.
that, that crowd is going to be rocking and rowdy. And will that be a potential issue to Alex Orji or whoever it is that they're going to be trying to do if they're still rolling with Orji at the QB spot? You have to believe. But still, this is a type of metal to where you know what type of mental makeup that your team is made up of. We knew what they were made up of last year. We really still get to see what they're truly made up of this year because, again, we got to see what the hell they look on the road in a true road game. Um, it's a good thing that the bye week is after this because it still gives you a chance to reevaluate some stuff. But knowing that what this team has uh, limit wise, you know, you'll be lucky to see what can you manage to do for the rest of the season with your offense the way it's currently producing.
Yeah. So, prediction time. What? I'll let you go first.
Well, for Michigan to have a chance to win this game, they're going to have to get after Will Rogers the way that they got after Miller Moss against USC. That's the only way. They rattled him, got immense pressure on him, rushed a few of his throws, killed a couple of those drives. Even when USC was able to run the ball well enough a couple of times, Michigan's defense was still being stout up to the fact where we saw them get a takeaway or two, even though Kenneth Grant, you really should have held on to that football and that fumble return. But that's going to be what Michigan has to do defensively because their offense is so inept that their defense almost has to overperform to give themselves a chance of winning. So knowing that, and also remembering the fact that this is a Washington team that has lost two of their last three games, including last week, two of all teams, Rutgers. Rutgers, yes, because they've had miscues, they've had turnovers, they've missed field goals, they've been dreadful themselves in the red zone. You know how we were talking about how early in the season the Lions was looking pathetic with how they were not cashing in the red zone. Well, that's what Washington has looked as of late, especially against Rutgers, and that's what led to them losing. So, if Michigan can have a similar defensive output, if you want to play say bend but not break, that's fine. Just be a wall in the red zone, get after the quarterback, see if you can get a takeaway or two. You're going to be in the spot. But again, as usual, what's going to be the theme of this season? What can your offense do in crucial moments when it comes to getting a needed first down, getting a response drive, or trying to have a 4-minute drive to salt away the clock and get the win? That's what it's come down to. We've seen situations to where they've had to get wins either through Kalel Mullings turning into Marshawn Lynch or the referees seemingly giving you a gift on an onside kick. Yeah, you take the win, but this type of momentum is not going to be sustainable for the remainder of this season.
All right. So,
in terms of prediction, though, who's going to win? I think what the line is Washington +2 or at least 1.5. Either way, it's less than a field goal. I'll say Michigan will cover. They may even win because, again, I'm just not too much impressed with Washington, even though they're at home. Michigan's defense and their experience on the defensive side of the field should give them enough of a chance to where, as long as they take care of the ball in the red zone, finish drives, get scores, and don't be completely stupid, they should be able to get this one in a win. Maybe a close victory, but I would expect Michigan to win by, say, I don't know, 27-20, that type of deal, because I think their defense is going to put on is going to make it close enough to where, as long as their offense just doesn't trip over themselves and poop their pants, they should be able to get some points and do enough to get the win. So that's my prediction: Michigan 27-20.
All right. So, I think I'm going to take the Wolverines by 10. 27-17, because I think Michigan's defense will still stand really tall. It's going to be a bit of a lower scoring affair, but I think the Wolverines are going to win by 10, 27-17. So, Spartans, they travel on the road to number 6 Oregon to play the Ducks Friday at 9 on Fox. That's later tonight, or should they say tomorrow night or whatever. But Oregon senior quarterback Dylan Gabriel has thrown 9 touchdown passes on 1,192 passing yards versus 1 interception. He has a quarterback rating, however, of 80.2. But I think Oregon's going to run away with this one because you saw the Spartans get rickrolled by the Ohio State Buckeyes in East Lansing last Saturday evening. Yeah, that was only on Peacock, too. That was not even worth watching, especially for those that want free TV.
To be fair, and to an extent, you could say that Michigan State could have performed things a little bit better if they had not had 3 friggin' turnovers just inside the red zone in the first half against Ohio State. Just saying. Turning the ball over, especially in the red zone, is going to be as such a backbreaker to you mentally, and so demoralizing from a momentum standpoint. So that is really the big key. That this is a team that, while defensively they may have been less, um, I'll say this, more disciplined last week, their offense still cannot take care of the football. They have already, through this season so far, 13 turnovers as a team. That is the third most in the entire nation. Read that again. Third most in the entire country. I already mentioned the 3 in the red zone against Ohio State, and that's to go with the fact that Aiden Childs, just by himself, has thrown eight interceptions. I understand he's young. I understand he's raw. I understand he's a prospect. He's a bit of a project.
It's just unacceptable.
Completely unacceptable. Sometimes you just have to know, as a quarterback, there are throws that you should have no business making at all. And Aiden Childs, time after time again, has been doing the complete opposite, chucking that type of advice into the wind, being reckless, being too careless, and it's hurt his team time after time again. And if he keeps on doing it, it's going to see a situation where Jonathan Smith may have to consider potentially putting his behind on the bench. Now, he doesn't want to do that because who else is on that offense or in that QB room is going to give them a chance compared to the type of chance that Childs give them? Frankly, no one else. But that's the trade-off that you live with. You bought the ticket. Now you got to pay for the ride. So with Childs, take care of the ball as best you possibly can, but I doubt it's going to matter against a team like this because this is an Oregon team that is focused. They wanted to make a statement for themselves that, hey, we're in the Big Ten too, but we have our own aspirations of wanting to compete for that national championship. You're going to look to make this a statement game against Michigan State, just like I expect to do the same against Michigan later on this season. It's worth noting that that Coach Smith is, by proxy, because he was at Oregon State for 6 years, 2-4 all time against Oregon. He is looking at a likely third straight loss after a good 3-0 start, but that's the nature of the business, and that's the nature of what your team will look like if you keep turning the ball over, and also who you're playing and when you're playing them. And getting Oregon back and Ohio State back-to-back, ouch. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. So knowing that also that the money line is, I believe, Oregon has got to be a 3-touchdown favorite. Last I checked, the spread was 23.5. Whew, and it's at Autzen Stadium. Good Lord. Okay. Can MSU get more than 7 points? That should be the real question. We know Oregon's going to win. We know they'll likely cover. But can MSU put up a bit of a fight to where, hey, can you get me 2 touchdowns? Can you get me maybe even 3 touchdowns? Because
I doubt it.
Oregon's on, because I will say Oregon's defense, I think you can find some holes to exploit, especially if you have Nick Marsh as a weapon that you can get the ball to in key moment situations. If you have the same vigorous start that you had against Ohio State and just minus the turnovers, you can, draw it out as long as possible, but eventually the talent will take over. And I expect Oregon to do that and then some. So, let's see. Oregon should win. They should cover. Let's go 45-10.
Yeah, that would be my exact score prediction. I was thinking it up, 45-10, because the Ducks are just going to keep on scoring and scoring and scoring, and State's barely going to score a touchdown and a field goal. So,
that Duck mascot,
45-10.
That Duck mascot better get himself ready because he's going to be doing a lot of push-ups on Friday night.
Yep, why not? That's his own prerogative. And then the Lions, they finally beat the Seahawks 42-29 at Ford Field. I watched the entire game after work, as seen on ESPN Monday Night Football. That's the first time the Lions beat the Seahawks since 2012. That was at home too. So that must have been a damn long time that the Lions beat the Seahawks on the road, by the way. But anyway, Jared Goff, 18 of 18, perfection plus a touchdown catch on a double pass with Amon-Ra St. Brown as his play catch partner. Jameson Williams, a 70-yard touchdown catch on a one-play drive. Tim Patrick, 2 key catches for 52 critical receiving yards, including a 29-yard catch toward midfield. Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, a combined 26 carries for 118 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. Gibbs had 2 touchdowns. Montgomery, the first touchdown of the game. They've been doing their thing as always. Jack Campbell forced a fumble and recovered and returned by Carlton Davis Jr. to set the tone for the Lions to go up 2 scores for most of the game. It was a back-and-forth seesaw touchdown exchange for most of the game. Seattle went for 2 twice and still failed later on in the game. And then the Seahawks were flagged for offensive pass interference on 4th down. And they had a beef against the officials, by the way. And then they were forced to punt as a result. And then the next possession, the Seahawks turned the ball over on downs. 4th and goal, miscommunication between Geno Smith and his center in the shotgun formation. And then finally, Kirby Joseph with a game-sealing interception in his own end zone. Wowzers. Crazy game. Some Lions fans were concerned about the Lions defense in this slugfest, but they finally got stops in late in that fourth quarter, didn't they?
Exactly, because that was the thing that was plaguing them the past couple of times that they played Seattle. They weren't able to get off the field, get that necessary third down stop, get that turnover when they needed to. They were always giving up big play after big play consistently. Yeah, we saw that a little bit in this game, but that came more so in the second half when Seattle was able to make adjustments and get the ball to the right playmakers, notably Kenneth Walker. His production, I believe he had over 100 yards on the ground. Essentially, the main reason why Seattle's in that game was possible. Yeah, Geno Smith had his yards, but that's what happens when you throw the ball almost 60 times.
Almost 400 passing yards, man.
Right. I mean, that's what's going to happen when you throw the ball 60 times and they eventually find a way to neutralize your running game. It's just going to happen. But even still, the defense was at it. Aiden Hutchinson, even though he didn't have a sack in this game, he was up in Geno's grill all night long, causing pressure in key moments and key downs to where you knew for a fact number 97 was the reason why. So for his effort and for the effort that he's done so far throughout for the first month of the season, Aiden was named the NFC Defensive Player of the Month. So that's already one caveat you can say he claims on his resume if you want to put up a potential case for Defensive Player of the Year. Here he is. He leads the lead in sacks through the first quarter of the season, and he's already been named Defensive Player of the Month. So there you go. But as for the rest of the defense, I got to say the linebacking crew really did a great job stepping up. This was Alex Anzalone's first game back since his concussion, so he had, admittedly, and for his standards, a very off night. I saw multiple times where he missed what's sure to be a clear-cut tackle that could have kept a minimum gain, which turned into a big play. So I'm willing to give him a pass on that. He did just come back from a concussion, and he's got a bye week coming up next week as well. So I'm willing to give him a pass based on the fact that we saw the rest of the linebackers take care of business. You mentioned Cracker Jack Campbell. He got the forced fumble on DK Metcalf, which led to the Carlton Davis pickup and fumble recovery. Let's not forget also Malcolm Rodriguez. He had a big key sack near the end of the first
That's
half.
the guy.
So he's been stepping up as well. And, of course, you also have Jalen Reeves-Mapen that you also throw in whenever you need a couple of snaps from him at your linebacker spot, and because he's more than just a guy that does special teams. Worth noting a couple of things, too. You mentioned Gibbs and Montgomery. Again, the way that Detroit is able to game plan and balance out their rushing attack by saying, hey, here's on one drive, we're going to hammer you with Montgomery, and then the next drive, we're going to, gash you up with Gibbs. It's consistent. It has been a working formula, and we're seeing Jameer become more versatile, and basically Monty's going to soften you up with the body shots, with his punishing runs. Like, he literally had a play where he ran through a dude's face, kept trucking, kept his legs moving, and still got a big gain of almost 20 or 30 yards on the play. So that's just an example of what kind of hammer
He
that
kept
Monty.
missing tackles too in the open.
Exactly. So that's what that shows you. That was a big yak play too.
Yeah,
Yards
I
after
saw that one.
contact, whatever you want to name it. So he sets you up. He softens you up with those body blows, and then Gibbs, he's the haymaker. He's the home run. He's that big right hand to where wham, if you get hit by him, you're going to go down to the canvas. So they have, in my and a lot of other people's views, the best running back duo in the league, because it's the perfect fit for that offense, behind that offensive line, how it bounces out the passing game. And by the way, Jared Goff, quite a bounce back for him, I would say. Ever since he had that bad game against Tampa, had a far much better game against Arizona, sans the one pick that he tried to force to St. Brown, but he did have a perfect first half in that one. And then, as we saw here, 18 for 18 passes. That is, I believe, an NFL record for most passes thrown in a game by a quarterback who did not have a single incomplete pass. And then you throw in the fact that he also got a touchdown catch on a perfectly executed play and thrown ball by St. Brown. Ben Johnson, by the way, I mentioned of how people were getting on him after the Tampa game. Well, you've seen how he stepped up the past couple of weeks as well. The hook and ladder against Arizona, committing to the run against Arizona, the same way we saw here against Seattle, which was key because you knew most of their defense, especially on that defensive line, was beat up due to injuries. So they greatly and smartly took advantage of that. So all that considered and combined, it's not a surprise. By the way, you mentioned Tim Patrick. He's fully starting to embrace that third receiver role, that receiver three, that Josh role of where Goff is going to need to get a ball to somebody on third down. They've already game planned on Laporta or Gibbs or St. Brown or JMO. Who else can he find? Voila! Here's Tim Patrick, slowly but surely starting to fill that void that was left by Josh Reynolds. So this game had everything. You had the offense showing out. You had your key players getting key scores. JMO showing off his speed. Defense doing what they had to do. Keeping things, like you said, getting necessary stops when they had to keep the momentum on their side. That was just tremendous game, a tremendous performance all around. And guess what? Even though the defense didn't have necessarily their best performance of the year, they still gave up less than 30 points. And what else can you ask for?
Yeah, and then Kirby Joseph, again, like I mentioned before, that game-sealing pick, he just had great coverage. But the tenacity of Kirby Joseph's pick, he somehow kept it off the turf.
Oh
Wow.
yeah, tremendous control, ability, and awareness. Um, we know how talented that Kirby has been since he's started his career. Remember, he was a third-round pick in 2021, same year that they got St. Brown and Sewell, I believe. So it's not really a surprise when you see, once again, some of these mid-round picks that Brad Holmes has been conducting, turning out into key core pieces for your team and for your future and for your culture. And Kirby is definitely the epitome of that culture, of what that team, in terms of identity-wise, what they want to strive to be. Hard-hitting, physical, nasty, yes, but also talented, very aware, very demure. Uh, there's nothing else you could ask for, because Kirby has been consistent since his rookie year when he picked off Aaron Rodgers 3 times up to now. Now he's got 12 or 13 career interceptions. I believe he had 12 picks going into the Monday Nighter. Now he's got 13. He has, along with Brian Branch, who, by the way, they were without Brian Branch and Ifeatu Melifonwu due to the injury. and they still were able to have that type of performance. So bravo, kudos to the defense. I could not be any more impressed by what I've seen so far for this first quarter of the season. And now this bye week coming up, it's a perfect time and perfect chance for guys to get rest, heal up, um, figure out what game plans to tinker out. And while, yeah, it's going to be a bit of a stretch from here on out, you won't get another bye week technically for the rest of the season. There is still a little bit of schedule, I'll say schedule karma that can work out your way if you can make it towards that Thanksgiving week. Well, yes, it's a short week. You have to play 2 games in 1 week. But after that, you don't play again until the Thursday night game at home against Green Bay. And then you don't play again until not that next Sunday, but the following Sunday after that. So we're looking at what, a 10 to 15 day stretch where you only have to play 2 games and like from Thanksgiving to like 10 days after. So you're going to be able to take advantage of that rest on those off days and key moments of your Detroit. So, yeah, the early buy is kind of a little bit of a surprise now, but frankly, I think it comes at the right time for this team.
It does. So there's still some pros and some cons. Yes, so I mentioned the Kirby Joseph pick. It was great coverage. It's just the man-to-man coverage just needs more consistency because while the pass rush was there, it doesn't always work.
Yeah, and some and
Geno
you're gonna
Smith can still scramble, and he's still going to find wide open receivers, and this it just keeps reoccurring. Big plays, first downs, even a touchdown or two.
and the
Can't
occasional
happen.
and the occasional pass interference penalty.
On
So
Terrion Arnold, that's another con.
yeah,
Like 5 or 6 penalties in one freaking game. Jeez.
well, I will admit some of those calls are ticky tack. You gotta know that. Hey, listen, they're gonna call things different in the NFL that they're not gonna let you get away with. That
That's just the NFL rules, and you're going to have to adjust by that too.
and he
That's what I
will.
mentioned.
Yeah, he will. I would say give him some time, give him more chance to study tape or whatever the case may be. He will make the necessary adjustments. Because even Sauce Gardner was observing when he commented on Twitter saying, you know what, if he does this little technique thing here, straighten himself out, not to worry too much on the hands. Like even Chad Ochocinco saying, hey, don't worry about using your hands too much. There are little ticks,
On
little
the
things.
body, no. Play the
Yeah,
ball. That's
exactly.
simple. That's
Play
simple
the
to
ball.
learn. It doesn't take that long.
Right, but again, the game speed and the type of caliber of receivers that you're facing week in and week out, that's far different than what you're facing in college, even in the SEC. You're going to be facing a DK Metcalf 1 week, and then you're going to be facing a Marvin Harrison Jr. the next. You're going to be
CeeDee
facing
Lamb.
you're going to be facing a CD Lamb. You're going to be facing a Christian Watson. You're going to be facing a Justin Jefferson. So again, that's a far different step up in competition and far different step up in caliber of talent that you're going to be going against than say Johnny Come Lately in college.
Right. So I guess that covers everything in Lions, doesn't it?
Just about.
Yep. All right. So what did we learn in this episode?
Well, we learned that the Tigers, frankly, they refuse to go down. They refuse to cool down.
They
And
refused to lose. They swept the
yes, sir,
Astros.
exactly. And what they have cultivated themselves is one of the most unbelievable and remarkable runs you will ever remember. Now, remember, this is a team that, based on playoff runs in the past, their identity was, hey, we have star power, we have big bombers, we're going to mash you, we have great pitching starting rotation, but they had crappy bullpens. Now, here is, hey, we have a great starter, but we have a hell of a bullpen. No, we don't have monster mashers, but we have timely hitting. We have guys that know what to do, when to do it, and we have a great manager that's pulling the strings. So what we've learned from them is that this is the norm from them going back to August 11th and up to now. Now, can they keep it up against Cleveland? That's still yet to be seen. I believe they have a better chance than not than most people will get them credit for. And I expect this to be another entertaining series that will come down to the wire like we saw against Houston. We also learned that Michigan will have their hands cut out, have things, will have their hands full, so to speak, against Washington. But if they do the necessary right things, such as taking care of the ball in the red zone, getting end zones, getting points and touchdowns in the red zone, and rattling their quarterback at Washington the way they were to do against USC, they will have a chance. Conversely, for Michigan State, they have no chance. The only chance they have now is hoping that Oregon decides to not drop 60 points on them. That's really what we learned about them at this point. They're looking at a potential 3-3, 500 record after having a 3-0 start. But things are still optimistic for them to where they can get to 5, 6, maybe even 7 wins by the end of this year, depending on how things play out against certain teams in certain games. And as for the Lions, thankfully they got that monkey off their back, so to speak, in terms of beating the Seahawks. Great showing of Monday Night Football, showing the black jerseys, showing off great play calling, showing off your playmakers on offense and your defense, that even though they gave up a couple of big plays, I think that's more so a testament to the caliber of players that's on that Seattle team. When you have a DK Metcalf, when you have a Jackson Smith and Jigba, when you have an AJ Barner, when you have a Kenneth Walker, don't matter who your quarterback is.
Lockett.
Right. Now Lockett. It don't matter who your quarterback is. If you can get the ball to those dudes without taking bad sacks and without forcing bad turnovers, you're going to have a chance. And that's what we saw. But thankfully, our offense, as we can see, they finally has seemed to have shaken off the rust. Goff looks spectacular. And frankly, this guy, well, I won't say, frankly, coming into the bye week, this was the best type of way you could find yourself doing, because after that Tampa loss, things were looking a little bit bleak, a little bit concerning, and so now you're looking at 3-1 and one of the best records in the conference, as opposed to being 2-2 and being multiple games back behind both Minnesota and Seattle. So thankfully, they were able to get to take care of business, handle things straight, and now they find themselves in a fair position going into the bye week.
Exactly. And don't forget the Red Wings coming up. Their regular season starts next week. So that's another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on the Huddle Sports Network. I'm Taylor Phillips. He's Ed Smith. Follow the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on X, Instagram, and TikTok at Michigan_Truth. And like its Facebook page. Subscribe to its YouTube channel at the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast, all in one word. Like our videos and turn on all notifications on the bell icon. Watch each of our episodes in full to help improve our public watch hours. Follow it and listen to it in audio form on Spreaker. Download the Spreaker app. Also join its supporters club on Spreaker, the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. Follow me on X, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at DT2Phillips with 2 L's. Follow Ed Smith on X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, and YouTube at EdSmith313. Business endorsements go to Athletico Physical Therapy on Woodward and Ferndale, the B4 Foundation, Best Buy with Geek Squad in Traverse City for repairing my phone not once but twice in the future, Buffalo Wild Wings in Mount Pleasant, Cali Tickets, call 877-225-8425 or visit CaliTickets.com. Creative embroidery of Cadillac for designing the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast logo on my long sleeve shirt and t-shirt. Cuts by Melanie in Lake City. Hooters of Saginaw. It's a Denise Jewelry in Lake City. Let's Roll With It Rolled Ice Cream in Cadillac. Like them on Facebook. Follow them on TikTok at The Food Mafia LLC and on Instagram at The Food Mafia Rolled Ice Cream. Their flavor of the week, pumpkin cheesecake, which I'll try probably on Saturday. The Misaki Golf Club in between Lake City and McBain. Northern Auto Lab in Lake City, Northern Star Event Rentals in Cadillac, 231-884-8195, and on Facebook, Pro Quality Cleaners of Cadillac, Raven Social Restaurant on South Mitchell Street in downtown Cadillac, Samaritas, Union Barber in Birmingham and Ferndale, United Food Service Solutions of Grand Ledge, Michigan, United Mobile Power Wash and Dry Ice Works in Southfield, and Wellbeing with Catherine Palms. The Michigan Sports Truth Podcast is a presentation of the Huddle Sports Network. We'll talk next Thursday night to preview the Lions and Cowboys. We'll talk Tigers. We'll recap the Wolverines Huskies rematch or recap the Wolverines Huskies rematch and preview the Wolverines next game, and recap the just briefly recap Spartans and Ducks and preview the Spartans next game after that. Until then, for Ed Smith, I'm Taylor Phillips signing off. But remember that we always observe and detect the truth about Michigan sports, because the truth is out there. Stay on the lookout. Him with a hind.
Take care and stay safe, everybody.
Power of the people.